The brass doorknob was cold under my palm, colder than it should have been for a Tuesday in June. I remember that detail because I've replayed it so many times since. The temperature of a doorknob, of all things, becoming the last normal moment of my life. My son's arm came down across the frame before I could turn it. Not a tap, not a joke. A bar, solid as a gate, elbow locked, palm flat against the opposite molding. "You don't want to go in there, Mom," he said. Quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet people use when they've rehearsed it. Behind that door, I could hear paper shredding. Not shredding like an accident, shredding like a machine that had been running for a while. "Move your arm, Daniel," I said. He didn't move his arm. That's where this starts. Not with the doorway. With what was behind it. My name is Renata Voss. I'm 61 years old, and 31 years ago, I started a commercial cleaning company out of the trunk of a 1994 Buick Century with $400 and a mop bucket I still own. By the time my son stood in that doorway, Voss Facility Solutions serviced 83 office buildings across 3 counties, employed 147 people, and cleared $6.2 million in annual revenue. I built payroll systems by hand at my kitchen table when my husband Marcus was working night shifts at the refinery, just so we could keep the lights on. I signed every contract for the first 15 years myself. I know what that company weighs because I carried it. Daniel is 34. 4 years ago, I made him Chief Operating Officer. Not because he'd earned it through the ranks. I'll admit that now. But because he was my son, and because his wife, Priya, told me at Thanksgiving that he just needed someone to believe in him for once. I believed in him with a $1.4 million line of company credit, a company Amex, and full digital access to our client contracts and banking portal. That door I was standing in front of was the door to his office. Inside was the filing cabinet where we kept our master service agreements, the actual signed originals, not scans. I want you to remember the shredder sound. It comes back. 3 weeks before the doorway, I went to a company mixer I wasn't supposed to attend. Daniel had told me it was just vendors. "Mom, you'll be bored." And normally I'd have taken the excuse gladly. My knees don't love standing on concrete floors anymore. But our biggest client, Hallbrook Medical Properties, was going to be there, and I wanted to shake the hand of the new facilities director myself. I walked in through the service entrance out of habit. 31 years of always entering buildings through the back, and I heard my son's voice before I saw him. He was standing by the bar in a suit I didn't recognize, a suit that cost more than our first delivery van, holding a rocks glass of something amber, laughing with 3 men I'd also never met. "She still thinks it's her company," Daniel was saying, swirling the ice. "It's cute, honestly. Let the old bird believe she's still steering the ship while we actually run it." One of the men, tall, sunglasses pushed up on his head indoors, laughed and said, "As long as the check's clear, man, who cares whose name's on the door?" I stood behind a pillar in my sensible flats and my Target blazer, holding a paper plate of shrimp cocktail I never ate, and I listened to my son call me the old bird to strangers in a suit I'd never seen an invoice for. I didn't confront him that night. I went home, sat at my kitchen table, the same one, and I opened our accounting software instead. The first thing I found was a recurring monthly payment of $18,750 to something called Meridian Strategic Advisory, LLC. I didn't recognize the name. When I asked Daniel about it over the phone, keeping my voice light, almost apologetic for asking, he didn't miss a beat. "Oh, that's just our new growth consultancy, Mom. Meridian's helping us restructure operational overhead ahead of the Q3 rebrand. It's completely standard for a company at our revenue tier. You wouldn't have needed this when we were smaller, but scaling requires strategic partners." It sounded smart. It sounded like something a business magazine would print. I said, "Of course, that makes sense," and I let it go out loud. Quietly, I searched the LLC registration myself. Meridian Strategic Advisory had been incorporated 4 months earlier. Its registered agent was a P.O. box in Scottsdale. Its sole listed officer was a name I did recognize, Priya's brother, Rohan. 2 weeks later, I noticed our janitorial supply orders, the actual soap, the actual mop heads, the unglamorous guts of the business, had switched from our vendor of 11 years, Carlisle Supply, to a new outfit called Apex Industrial Goods, at a 22% markup. I asked Daniel why we'd switched suppliers on products that hadn't changed in a decade. Carlisle's fulfillment was becoming a liability, Mom. Late shipments, inconsistent SKUs. Apex has better logistics infrastructure and, frankly, better long-term pricing once we hit volume tier 3. He said logistics infrastructure, the way some men say the names of cars they don't own yet. I nodded. I said it sounded like a smart supply chain decision. Quietly, I called Carlisle myself. Their owner, a woman named Denise I'd known since 2009, told me she'd never once been late on a shipment in 11 years, and that Daniel had told her the switch was a cost-cutting mandate from the board. We didn't have a board. We had me. Apex Industrial Goods, it turned out, was owned by the same tall man from the mixer with the sunglasses on his head. His name was Trent Kowalczyk. I came in early one Thursday, 6:40 a.m., before anyone expected me, to get a jump on payroll. Daniel and Trent were in the break room, door half open, coffee steaming, neither one hearing my rubber-soled flats on the tile. "She's gonna find the Meridian stuff eventually," Trent was saying. "She won't," Daniel said, laughing. "She still balances the books with a calculator she bought at Walmart in like 2003. My mother thinks cloud means it might rain. By the time she notices anything, the transfer to the holding company will already be done, and I'll be sole signatory. She built this thing with her hands, and she's going to hand it to me with a bow on it because she doesn't know how to read a cap table." I stood in the hallway with my keys still in my hand, and I did not make a sound. That word, holding company, sent me back to the accounting portal that same night. Buried 3 folders deep in our shared drive, under a subfolder labeled, almost insultingly, miscellaneous_admin, I found incorporation documents for a VFS Holdings Group, filed 6 weeks earlier. Daniel was listed as CEO. I was not listed at all. Attached to the folder was a draft asset transfer agreement, a legal mechanism to move VOS Facility Solutions contracts, equipment, and accounts receivable into the new holding company, effectively gutting the original business I'd built and leaving me, the founder, holding an empty shell with my name still on the lease and none of the assets. The draft cited a shareholder vote already conducted. I never voted. I never received a notice. My signature was on the document anyway, a signature that was not, in fact, mine. That's what the shredder was for. That's what was behind that door. There was one more thing, and it was the one that kept me up until 3 a.m. with the kitchen light still on. Buried inside the same miscellaneous_admin folder was a $2.8 million key person life insurance policy, taken out 4 months earlier, listing me as the insured in VFS Holdings Group, the shell company I wasn't even a shareholder of, as the sole beneficiary. I called our longtime insurance broker, a man named Gerald who'd handled our policies since 2004, and asked, as innocently as I could manage, whether he remembered writing that one. "Daniel called me directly," Gerald said. "Told me you'd requested it yourself, said you wanted peace of mind for the family since you weren't getting any younger. I had you fill out the medical questionnaire over the phone. I assumed that was you." It was not me. I have never spoken to Gerald about a life insurance policy in my life. Someone had answered basic medical history questions in my voice, or close enough to it, over a phone call I never made. I sat with that fact for a long time. A company he wasn't legally entitled to. A signature that wasn't mine. And now a $2.8 million payout that would only ever mean anything to anyone the day I stopped breathing. I didn't sleep that night. I made coffee instead, and I made a decision instead of a phone call. I made a decision at my kitchen table that night. The same table, the same yellow overhead light I'd balanced payroll under for 3 decades. I decided Daniel and Trent and whoever else was circling this thing needed to believe, completely, that I had no idea what was happening. So I started performing. I let my reading glasses slide further down my nose when Daniel talked business, and I'd say, "I don't understand all this modern financial talk. Sweetheart, you handle it." Even though I understood every word. I started asking him to walk me through simple spreadsheets I'd built myself 15 years ago, watching him explain them to me slowly, patiently, like I was a child, enjoying. I could see him enjoying it. I complained, gently, convincingly, about my knees, about being tired, about wanting to step back more and trust the next generation. I let my voice go softer at meetings. I stopped correcting people. I let Priya pat my hand at dinner and say, "You've done so much, Renata. It's okay to let go now." And I smiled and said maybe she was right. Inside, I was doing math. If they thought I was fading, they'd stop being careful. People don't hide things from someone they've already decided is harmless. I needed them careless. I needed them loud. The old bird was going to sit very, very still. I hired a forensic accountant named Wendell Ashby, quietly, on a personal card, paid from my own account so nothing would ping the company books. I gave him everything. The Meridian payments, the Apex markup, the VFS Holdings filing, the forged signature, the insurance policy. He confirmed within 9 days that Meridian Strategic Advisory had received, cumulatively, $131,250 in 8 months for advisory services that produced 0 deliverables, and that the Apex markup alone had siphoned an additional $94,000 in overpayments, kicked back in part to Trent, and, per 2 intercepted invoices, partially back to Daniel through a shell payment labeled referral bonus. Wendell also flagged the insurance policy as a separate matter entirely, one he strongly suggested I hand directly to an attorney rather than let simmer inside a business dispute. "This isn't overhead skimming anymore, Renata," he told me over the phone, and I remember how carefully he chose his next words. "You need this documented somewhere outside your own house." I did. I gave a sealed copy of everything to my attorney, Marisol Chun, with instructions to be opened automatically if anything ever happened to me that looked even slightly unusual. I told exactly one person that I'd done this, Marcus. Then I set the bait. I told Daniel, in front of Priya, over a Sunday dinner I hosted myself, that I was finally ready to sign over majority operational control before I get too old and confused to know what I'm signing. I said, laughing at my own joke. I told him I wanted to do it properly, at the company's 20th anniversary gala the following month, in front of the staff and our biggest clients. A real moment. A public passing of the torch. I watched his face when I said it. I watched him try not to smile. What Daniel didn't know was that I'd already had a discreet security firm install a hidden camera and microphone in his office, the same office behind that door, disguised inside a smoke detector that had, coincidentally, needed replacing anyway. My phone buzzed quietly in my apron pocket every time it picked up a new voice in that room. I sat at my kitchen table some nights with the phone face down, vibrating, and I let it buzz twice before I even looked. I also asked Wendell to prepare one document, a real, notarized forensic audit, ready to be handed to our attorney and a Hallbrook Medical Properties compliance officer the moment I gave the word. I waited. The buzzing continued. 3 weeks of small vibrations under tablecloths, under desks, under the counter while I served coffee I didn't drink. The 20th anniversary gala was held in the ballroom of the Wingate Hotel, 190 guests, our full staff, 6 major clients including Hallbrook, and a podium with a microphone that Daniel had personally requested be moved closer to his side of the stage. He wore the suit from the mixer. Priya wore a dress that cost, I later learned, $2,200, charged to the company Amex 3 days earlier under marketing materials. Trent sat at a reserved table near the front, sunglasses finally off, tucked into his breast pocket like a trophy. Daniel took the microphone before I did. That wasn't the plan, but I let him. 20 years ago, he said, my mother started this company with a mop bucket and a dream. Polite laughter. And tonight, I think it's time we recognize that the next chapter belongs to the next generation. He raised his glass toward me, and I saw the exact second his eyes flicked to Trent, some private joke passing between them. To new leadership, he said. To finally modernizing this thing. Someone near the back, Trent, not quietly enough, said, to the old bird finally sitting down, and a small ripple of laughter followed, ugly and confident, the laughter of people who believe they'd already won. I stood up. I did not raise my voice. Before we toast to new leadership, I said, I think everyone should know exactly what that leadership has been doing. I walked to the podium slowly, the way I actually walk now, knees and all, and I set down a folder. On November 3rd, this year, a company called Meridian Strategic Advisory was paid its first of 8 monthly installments totaling $131,250. Its owner is my daughter-in-law's brother. It has never produced a single report. I opened the folder. On January 12th, our 11-year vendor Carlisle Supply was replaced by Apex Industrial Goods, owned by the gentleman at that table. I did not point, I did not need to, at a markup that quietly returned kickbacks through a line labeled referral bonus. The room had gone very still. And 6 weeks ago, a document was filed creating VFS Holdings Group, designed to transfer every contract, every account, every asset of the company I built with my own hands into a shell where my name would not appear, under a shareholder vote that never happened, beneath a signature that is not mine. I looked at my son. His glass was still raised, forgotten, the ice slowly melting. I know all of this, I said, because I have known for 6 weeks. I have it notarized. I have it recorded. And representatives from Holbrook Medical Properties Compliance Office, who I invited personally tonight, already have copies in their bags. At the mention of compliance, 2 people at Holbrook's table stood up, quietly, and stepped toward the hallway, phones already out. I picked up the forged transfer agreement from the folder, a printed copy Wendell had prepared exactly for this, and I tore it once, cleanly, down the middle, the sound sharp enough to carry across a silent ballroom. The old bird, I said, still knows how to read a cap table. 2 uniformed officers, arranged in advance through our attorney once the notarized audit was filed that afternoon, entered through the ballroom side door precisely as I set the torn halves down. Within 72 hours, Trent Kowalczyk was named in a civil fraud suit filed by Voss Facility Solutions, and within 11 days, Holbrook Medical Properties independently referred the kickback scheme to their own legal counsel, triggering a parallel investigation into vendor fraud. Within 1 week, Daniel was removed as Chief Operating Officer by unanimous vote of our attorney-supervised emergency ownership review, and the fraudulent VFS Holdings Group filing was formally voided by the State Corporation's office once the forged signature was confirmed by a document examiner. Within 3 weeks, Priya filed for divorce. Not from me, from Daniel, citing, according to the filing, financial deception she was not made aware of, though our forensic accountant's report suggested otherwise about how aware she truly was. Within 1 month, Meridian Strategic Advisory LLC was dissolved, and Rohan quietly relocated out of state. Within 5 weeks, Gerald's insurance carrier flagged the $2.8 million key person policy for fraud review after confirming, through their own records, that the medical questionnaire had never actually been completed by me, and the policy was voided in full, with the carrier opening its own referral to the state insurance fraud division. Within 6 weeks, Trent's civil suit was quietly amended to include criminal fraud referrals from 2 separate agencies, and the sunglasses, I'm told, stayed in his pocket for the entirety of his first deposition. And within that same month, I called an all-staff meeting. No cameras, no gala, just our own people in our own break room. And I told all 147 of them that not one job, not one paycheck, not one benefit was at risk. I personally covered, out of my own reserve, the 3 weeks of payroll uncertainty the scandal had caused while accounts were frozen during the investigation. So no cleaner, no dispatcher, no accountant who had nothing to do with any of it would ever miss a mortgage payment because of what my son did. That was never their fault. I made sure they knew it. 5 weeks later, on a night when the rain was coming down sideways off the bay, I heard a knock at my front door, my actual front door, at home. The house Marcus and I bought with our first real profit in 1998. It was Daniel. No umbrella, jacket soaked through, the suit from the mixer replaced by a hoodie I didn't recognize. His car, I learned later, had been repossessed the week before, along with most of what the fraud had bought him. "Mom," he said, and his voice cracked in a way I hadn't heard since he was 9 years old and scared of a thunderstorm. I have nowhere else to go. I stood in the doorway. The same kind of doorway, I realized, that he'd once blocked me from entering with both arms, and I felt the cold air pushing past him into the house. "You told a room full of strangers I was an old bird who didn't know what she was building," I said. "You forged my name to take it from me. I built a company you tried to steal, and I built a family you tried to spend like it was disposable income." I kept my voice level. I didn't shout. I never had to. "I hope you find your feet, Daniel. But not here. Not tonight. Not like this. I closed the door. Gently. Not slammed. I never slam doors, not even now. Marcus was waiting in the kitchen, 2 mugs of decaf already poured, steam rising the way it had every night for 38 years. You okay? He asked. I built that mop bucket business with my own hands, I said, sitting down across from him at the same yellow-lit table. Nobody's ever taking it out of them again. He reached across and took my hand, and for the first time in months, the house was quiet in a way that felt earned instead of empty. If you build something with your own 2 hands, never let anyone, not even your own blood, convince you that quietly stepping aside is the same thing as generosity. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is let people believe you're weak, right up until the moment the truth simply speaks for itself. Have you ever had to pretend to be someone's fool just to finally see who they really were? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. If this story hit home for you, hit like, subscribe for more real stories of betrayal and quiet justice, and I'll see you in the next one.